you guys see, I wanted you to see these awards because I don't get any credit from the media for them. Is Murs here? Yeah, because you're going to have to look at them. Look at this. Most Effective Republican 2025. I'm proud of it. I put it up. And let's see. Oh, yeah. So just so you know, I know what I'm talking about. I've got my two. I got to bring one of these up just so the media can see it. Look at this. The Michigan Economic Development Association Legislative Economic Development Champion Award. So when I talk about economic development, I know what I'm talking about. And I've many times, I've won awards, the Michigan Manufacturers, Michigan Chamber, SBAM. I'm their Legislator of the Year, SBAM, a lot of them, NFIB. So I put them all up. And just so you know, and this is a true story, there's like 4 or 5 other associations that want to give me their Legislator of the Year award, but we haven't scheduled the meetings yet. There's such a backlog in meetings. We haven't scheduled those yet, but there's a lot of them. There's like 4 or 5 other associations that are you're going to start seeing them appear when I have time to take the meetings. So we'll do that very soon. And then I do want to express my displeasure with Mr. Eggert. I recently read your top 200 top leaders in West Michigan. I guess I was number 201 this year. Didn't make it, but that's okay. When you're an outsider like me, you don't want those things. They give me these awards. I don't even do the meetings. I don't do the meetings, and that's why we're not getting the awards, because I don't. But that was a rough one. I mean, Cranes, just right outside of that top 200. I said, well, maybe if we put more pork projects in the budget, we would have been on the list. But we didn't do that. And, I'm an outsider here. I'm an outsider with a lot of those communities, the elitists that subscribe to Cranes. I'm an outsider with them in West Michigan. That's the problem with being an outsider, but we advocate for the taxpayers of Michigan. And I did want to compliment, I've never done this before, I wanted to compliment Maggie and Elena. I did compliment Elena once on the, remember that really good story you wrote? The greatest story in the history of Gongwer, when I was Newsmaker of the Year, or whatever they call it. You both mentioned heat in your stories. Thank you. I know I'm hearing from more and more reporters that their editors are pressuring them not to include heat, not to mention my name. They don't want to give me credit. I understand these editors, right? There's an establishment everywhere, right? I'm not in the Cranes establishment or the Lansing establishment. I'm not a Lansing insider like Sarah Anthony. Or in the Cranes, but we do have heat, and you two stood up to your editors, and you got heat in there, Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plans. So thank you to both of you. And I know a lot of the other editors and the establishment elites don't like me, but we're going to keep advocating for heat. I did want to talk about something that none of the reporters will talk about. You guys won't cover this. You want to come up, Kathy? You guys know Kathy Zhu. She's doing a great job for us. Why don't you look at this? Look at this. It's a new poster. It's Halloween, and we have a new poster. You guys won't talk about this. The 2,000 ghost employees that we eliminated in the state budget. And you see this, we're calling them the Ghostbusters because they got rid of so many ghost employees, and we're doing that here in Halloween. Brandy said to me, I don't know where Brandy is. You guys know Brandy. Brandy said, Matt, we got to do it before Halloween. If we do it after Halloween, no one will like it. But you look at this. We got rid of 2,000 ghost employees, and you look at we put John Roth on there. He got rid of over 890 ghost employees in the Department of Health and Human Services, and there's a lot more. Matt Maddock, he did a great job. He found them all. We were laughed at, and then we got rid of 2,000 of them, and the reporters, they won't call them ghost employees. They won't admit it, but we got rid of 2,000 positions, and not one state worker was laid off. And I think it saved us about $200 million. And, the reporters, they believe this very political organization called CRC. I don't even know what it stands for. What does it stand for? Citizens Research Council. And these guys would never make it at House Fiscal. They're too political, and I don't think they're as reputable. I haven't been around. I guess you guys in the Lansing establishment find them reputable, but they're not reputable. They should admit that there's 2,000 ghost employees that we eliminated in state government. And I read story after story after story from the press where they talk about all the programs we cut in the budget. We cut over $800 million from the departments permanently, and we dedicated it to roads using the corporate income tax, which was part of the House Republican plan. Remember, when we set the House Republican plan on roads, what was it? It was all of the money collected at the pump going to roads, and it was dedicating corporate income tax to roads. And you look at what came out, well, we gave Winnie Brinks her marijuana tax, but we also dedicate corporate income tax to roads, and we put all of the money collected at the pump to roads. So it is really the framework that we put out that became the roads plan. Now, I would give you examples. I would show you. I would say, look, we can do it by ending SOAR. We can do it by clipping some of these IT programs. We can do it by getting rid of ghost employees. We can do it by getting rid of the business development funds. Right? But those were examples to show the media how what I was saying could be done, right? But you can plug and play that. It could be other combinations of waste, fraud, and abuse that we cut to do it, and ultimately that's what happened. So we got rid of 2,000 ghost employees, saving the taxpayers about $200 million. Yes, but we didn't do it all with ghost employees. Yes, we cut, what do they call it, these business incentive funds in half. We cut them in half. We stopped funding SOAR. We did a lot of these things. We didn't end the mega credits, but we're coming back to do that before the end of the year. But we found other cuts in order to dedicate all of that waste, fraud, and abuse to roads. But, we don't have to get lost in the details. The structure was always dedicating corporate income tax to roads and collecting all of the money at the pump and dedicating it to roads. But I will tell you, we got rid of 2,000 ghost employees, and the media won't cover it. I don't think I saw any stories on it. But then you read the stories, and they say, they believe this very uncredible Citizens Research Council. And by the way, I'm watching this on Skubik's show. It's one of the funnier things I've seen, and maybe Skubik will admit it. Oh boy. Oh boy. Hey, you're sitting over there because you don't want to look at the poster, right, Craig? I know. Well, yeah. See, because you won't report on it, so you're going to say, I didn't see the poster. So, okay, Craig. Isn't that convenient? He's sitting there. You should sit right in front of the poster, Craig. Anyway. This is the Ghostbusters. They eliminated 2,000 ghost employees in state government that none of you will talk about. But great to have you here, Craig. What a day. Before you leave, Craig, I want you to see all these awards. All right? So anyway, because I know what I'm talking about on economic development because you look at these awards. But anyway, you have the fake Citizens Research Council, which has no idea. And I'm watching this chart, by the way, and Skubik, I think he'll issue a correction, but he puts up this chart. And even if we use their numbers, I'm looking at this, and it says 84.1 in 2025. And then in their numbers, it says 84 in 2026. And then I'm watching I'm watching these guys, and there's 84 is bigger than 84.1. And so even using their fake Citizens Research Council numbers, these guys know much less than I do about the budget. They could never work at House Fiscal with me as the leader. Our guys know a lot more than the Citizens Research Council do about the numbers, but I'm looking at this, and it's 84.1 under their numbers, and then 84, and then they say, 84 is bigger than 84.1. It's ridiculous. So even if we use their numbers, it's still smaller than last year. I don't use their numbers. I use our number, which is 81 billion. But even if we use their fake numbers, it's still smaller than last year. So we delivered. But I'm looking at this, and they say it's one time. It's all one time. And then all of you guys write, I listened to this fake analysis from the Citizens Research Council. They say they only cut one time. They cut no ongoing. And then all of you write story after story after story about all of this ongoing we cut. And you say, they didn't cut any ongoing. I said, well, then what are all these stories you're writing? You're all these cuts. I said, oh, no. So you look at this, what we did. The Medicaid is exploding, and you guys know that. It's much bigger. It's much bigger than it ever was. We fit all that expansion of Medicaid in there. We fit all this stuff in there. And the ongoing number, according to the Citizens Research Council, is the same. I think that means that we cut quite a lot out of the state side if you add in all this federal stuff, and they say the ongoing is the same. I'd say we cut quite a bit of state money, and you look, we cut $800 million from the departments permanently, and we dedicate that through roads to the corporate income tax. That was not one time. That doesn't count the one time that we cut. We cut a lot of one time. You saw that we eliminated 87% of the pork spending. That's all one time. 1.3 billion in 25, 160 is around 160 million in this year one time. So we actually cut a lot of one time, but no one in the press is giving us the credit for the ongoing. And you're going to see that when you see the budget this year. The Citizens Research Council doesn't know this because I have better numbers than they do. Next year is actually over $500 million deficit based on the numbers that we have, which means there's going to be another over $500 million of cuts next year in the budget, setting that up. So, we're really on and then the year after that, I think it's another $300 million that's going to have to be cut. So based on the projections, we're actually setting up quite a significant change in the way things work because, and the reason for that is because we dedicated that waste, fraud, and abuse, including the 2,000 ghost employees, we dedicated it permanently to roads through the corporate income tax. So, you're not going to have that general fund money to pad departments because it's permanently dedicated to roads. And I know this is another one, and I don't blame the reporters because I know the editors won't let you say heat. But the whole ethics, accountability, and transparency plan. We had a setback in the Senate yesterday. Hopefully, our honest journalists will support me on the fact that 10 days disclosure, that's not heat, that's not fair disclosure. Under these ideal budget practices, you would already have a deal in place 10 days out, and then you would be drafting the bills and getting ready for the vote, and then you would disclose probably as or after you're making the final deal. And I'll just say, I've been in these meetings, unfortunately, and I hope I'm never in them again. You sit there with some of these Democrats, and they say, okay, here's a list of 20 pork projects that we're going to shove in the budget. You ask them to just give me a 2-sentence explanation of what every one of these are. They have no idea. They say, we'll have to get back to you. That was not the case on the projects that the Republicans were proposing. Things like this this bridge in Trenton that Riley Linting got in the budget, and we got a rural hospital in Sheridan. Pat Outman did a great job on that. And you look through these things, we had documents that had been public since April 1 that we could just hand them and say, you want to know what this is? Here you go. Here's a public thing that's been out there that explains who the beneficiary is, what the public purpose is, who's the sponsor. So you see, after all these conversations, the best we can get the Senate Democrats to vote on is 10 days. It's unacceptable. It's not what we agreed to. I personally think that we should do 90 days disclosure. And while, I can be critical of the media at times, I do give you credit that you guys look into these projects. You find things out about the projects, and that helps us make a better decision. Because ultimately, I think if we all work collectively with the public, we can learn a lot about these projects, and we won't make mistakes. And some of these Democrat members don't have the integrity that others do, and so they try to do something shady, and we've seen it happen before. They try to shove something in there that's not vetted, that's not appropriate, that's not a good use of taxpayer dollars. If we can get 90-day notice, we can identify those things early, and we can ensure they don't get funded all the way. So, and I do give you credit that you guys have helped us along the way, but it's so much more helpful if we get you these documents early and they're done properly through HEAT, which is the right way to disclose HEAT, not through the other ways. You guys just have them on the website. You can access them. It'll be a much better process for all of you. So, I know we get a lot of advocacy from the media on transparency issues. Hopefully, we'll see that advocacy here as we collectively laugh at the Senate Democrats for this ridiculous transparency proposal, this fake HEAT. Most people see that it's a smokescreen. It is not transparency, and we're not going to let Winnie Brinks get away with this. This is not transparency. And I will tell you, this is why the government shut down. This is why the budget was as difficult to do as it was, is because Democrats are addicted to pork. They wanted to shove billions of dollars of pork into this budget. They did not want any disclosure until after the vote. And we just are like, no, we're not doing this pork. And finally, we came to a signed agreement the night that the government shut down. We secured a signed agreement from Winnie Brinks that she would finally disclose the pork and that we would no longer change the budget. They were trying to shove billions and billions of dollars of pork into this budget even after our negotiations were done, constantly relitigating it. And the government shut down over it. How do you draft the bills when they're constantly shoving more pork and trying to renegotiate everything? We got a commitment from Winnie Brinks that night. We're not changing the budget anymore, and we're going to disclose the pork. And then we said, fine, we'll do some pork, but we're going to cut it by a lot. And we ended up cutting it by 87%. And we were successful in getting them to agree to HEAT. Now, maybe we should have shut down the government longer to force the bills to come earlier, but I really felt like it was important once we got that agreement to move the continuing resolution. And I'll tell you something that was important. You move a clean continuing resolution, and that's what we did. We moved a clean continuing resolution, and that bought us another week, and we got the budget done. And I hear a lot of people say, you guys in Michigan, you figured it out, and they look and they contrast that with what's going on at the federal level. And, I think that's a real testimony to the relationship that House Republicans and myself have built with Governor Whitmer. We came together, we compromised, but ultimately we had some wins in the deal, but we didn't get 100%. And I want to thank all the media for the great job they're doing trying to point out every single one of those compromises that I made. Thank you for that. Hopefully you guys point that out about the Democrats too. But, we wanted to keep the government open. We really were facing, you look at it, right, today is October 22. On October 20, we were facing our schools not getting paid. If we had done what the federal government was doing, we would have really faced that. We would have had our schools closed. We would have had, expensive loans taken out by schools. We would have had problems with our teachers. We would have had a lot of things. You would have saw a lot of these departments close down. And I think when the state departments close, they notice it more than the feds. And we avoided all of that. We fixed our local roads without raising taxes. That was a big one. Dedicating all of the money collected at the pump to roads. Now, we're not getting a lot of coverage on this, but do you remember, Speaker Tate represented Detroit, and he couldn't get the Public Safety Trust Fund done. They had a Democrat trifecta. They couldn't get the Public Safety Trust Fund done. When we did the walk-off, and by the way, we did the walk-off over three things. We did it over roads. We did it over the sick leave and tip credit. We wanted to see the restaurant industry protected. We wanted to protect tipped workers. We wanted to protect the people having a job. We wanted them to have a job. They and paid time off, but they needed a job too. And we wanted to fix local roads. We've now achieved all three of those things, by the way. When we did the walk-off, I made a commitment to Karen Whitsett. I said, look, when it was done, they punished her on the Public Safety Trust Fund. I said, we'll get it done. And we did. We got it done. And as a result, you're going to see more police on the streets in these local communities, and you're going to see them having the equipment they need to fight violent crime. And you think about the Democrats, they sat through that whole time with that money just sitting there when they could have fought gun violence in these cities. We got it done. We restored the school safety and mental health funding. The Democrats cut it 92%. We restored every dollar of it. And the government workers, many of them are coming back to work. We have an agreement that we're going to see more leases ended in state government. I looked at this. I'm actually getting some of the swipe data, which the CRC and others don't have. I have the swipe data, some of it. We've been looking at it, and I'll tell you, they are well below 80% occupancy. And occupancy is not going to be defined as there is a person assigned to the desk that doesn't come into work. That's not what's going to happen. There are going to be more state workers coming back to work, and there's going to be some leases that end, and that's how we're going to get to 80%. Now, this was an area that there was some compromise needed. The governor has a responsibility to the state workers. It's a little different than my responsibility, and so we worked together and we came up with a compromise. And as you see this play out over the next few months, you guys are going to say, Speaker Hall was right. Their lease is ending, and there are more workers coming back to work. And we're going to continue to monitor it. And look, next year, when we're doing the budget, we may push it even more. But we have to have some, because we forged such a good working relationship, our word has to mean something. And the conversations I'm having with the governor and her team, I'm very confident we're going to see that. So stay tuned. And I'm looking forward to a lot more clarity from them on how they do that. You look at what we accomplished on Medicaid, and I came up here and I told you guys this. The Democrats made such fodder about Medicaid. I came up here, I told you, I understand the One Big Beautiful Bill, and I understand the Medicaid, and I understand all of this. I studied all of it. And I said, what is the big fuss about? All we have to do is make some very minor changes to Medicaid, and we will get all the federal funding. And we did. We made those very minor changes, and you're not going to see any change in your Medicaid coverage as we go through this. So that was really overblown. But, look, we were very committed as Republicans to protecting Medicaid, and we did it. We invested over $250 million in our rural hospitals thanks to the federal money secured by President Trump under the One Big Beautiful Bill, and we're deploying that as quickly as we are able to in this legislation. So I think as we move ahead, you guys never would have. If I had told you we were going to get Governor Whitmer to sign a bill that did no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security after President Trump campaigned on it, would you guys have said I could do it? You never would have thought I could do it. And as a result of that, we're going to see many people across our state saving thousands of dollars a year in their paychecks for our workers, our restaurant workers, our tipped workers, a lot of our people working hard on overtime, and our seniors who are going to get Social Security. They are going to save thousands of dollars a year. That's a big deal because of the work the House Republicans did. And, I like to think a lot about fixing our roads, but this is also an affordability issue. People they're not going to have to make those car repairs as often because the roads are fixed. This is a major help to many people. It could be $750 a year the average person pays on their car repairs. That's going to hopefully start going away as we implement this roads plan. I work so well with so many people. I mean, you saw at the event we had in Macomb County, standing side by side with Governor Whitmer. Some of you in the press even pointed out that Governor Whitmer had me there as a surrogate at her events. I was there to talk to you guys at her events. I saw that in some of your stories. They didn't have Brinks there. They had me. But you look at it, I work well with Governor Whitmer. I've worked well with Mayor Duggan. We got the Public Safety Trust Fund done. I've worked well with Warren Evans in Wayne County, with Mayor Shore here in Lansing. You look at the things Mark Hackle said about me at the Macomb event. He was praising me. He said, I met with Matt Hall and I knew we were going to get roads done for the first time. So I work very well with a lot of these Democrats. Darren Camilleri, I work well with him. So you look, I work very well with a lot of these Democrats, but yet, Winnie Brinks, by the way, when Winnie Brinks was there under the Democrat trifecta, they didn't get anything done. They repealed all kinds of Rick Snyder ideas, and then when it came to positively governing, it all fell apart. It fell apart. They never got roads under Winnie Brinks. They never did FOIA when they had a Democrat trifecta. All the things they blame me for, they never got done in a Democrat trifecta. When we won the House, now all of a sudden we're getting roads done. We're getting tax relief done. We're getting the Public Safety Trust Fund done, which helps the Democrat districts more than the Republican districts, but is important for public safety. We're cutting pork out of the budget. We're bringing transparency. We're returning the state workers to work. We're doing all of these things, saving Medicaid with a Republican House. We didn't do any of it under a Democrat trifecta. So I would just say maybe it's Winnie Brinks that can't work with anybody. She couldn't get it done under the Democrat trifecta, and she's not getting it done now, and they blame me. So hopefully you guys consider that in your analysis on all your shows. Are there any questions for me? Or oh, yeah, Maggie, go ahead. Great job, by the way, giving me that award. Thank you. It was, but it was for 2025, which is the current year. What? Well, it says, I don't know. It says 2025, most effective Republican, but I'll take your word for it. I won it in 24. I won it in 23. I win it every year. That's a great one, yeah. So I think, I pointed out we've had a little road bump here on heat. Now, I have a signed agreement from Winnie Brinks that she's going to deliver heat. We're going to get the budget transparency and we're going to get reasonable heat, not this smoke screen. So we'll work through those bumps, and I think we'll be able to celebrate. Maybe I'll even have Craig standing next to me when we celebrate heat becoming permanent law. That'd be nice, wouldn't it, if we have the governor there signing the bill and me and Craig, standing there when heat gets signed. I'd love that. Yeah, I know. It's not, yeah, Craig would never do that, but maybe he'll write one nice sentence. He'll probably, it'll be a story. It'll be, Governor Whitmer and Winnie Briggs sign budget transparency. That'll be the story. They won't call it heat, and they won't mention me. They won't have my picture in it. So I'll just say, so there is going to be a heat 2 once heat is final. Once we get that big bill signing on heat, there will be a heat 2. So we're going to consider ideas like this as part of heat 2. I really didn't want to use conference committee this time. I didn't like it. I feel like a best practice is, really what we were trying to do. If you look at the House budget, we put the $100 million of earmarks in the budget, and I stand by it. It's $100 million of earmarks in the House budget. And what we tried to do was we tried to fight for that $100 million in the negotiations with the Senate. I do think it's a best practice if you're putting everything you're fighting for in your House or Senate budget, and then when you're negotiating with the other side, you're fighting for the stuff in that budget. And when you look at what came out in the final product and you look at the House projects, most of those came from what was in the House budget. I tried to fight for the stuff in the House budget. Now, one of the challenges that I had in the negotiation was I had to represent the Senate Republicans too. And so there were some big things that, Senator Bumstead and Rick Outman and, Senator Daley and others, they got Roger Houck. There's some things that we worked with them to help so they had successes for their district. Michelle Hoyting, a lot of them. We wanted them to have successes for their district. And so, there were some things that showed up that were things that we worked with them on. But I think a best practice is the House fights for what's in the House budget and the Senate fights for what's in the Senate budget, and it's transparent early. And as we move forward, we're going to look at how can we make that more achievable. And I don't know. Dan Aykroyd was in that movie, so that's probably the one that I am. I thought Ken Borton looks kind of like Bill Murray a little bit, doesn't he? I think he's got that little thing on it, the hair, and John Roth. He could be, Egon? So, yeah, there's some good ones on there. The problem is, it started out as only 4 because they're 4 Ghostbusters, but I said, how could we do this without what John Roth did, Mike Mueller? Mike Mueller eliminated so many ghost employees in the state police. I'd stand up here and the press would say, there are no ghost employees in the state police, and they'd scrutinize us, and then we got rid of like 500 ghost employees in the state police, and there's a lot more we can get rid of. And by the way, not one state trooper got laid off. That was a lie from the Democrats. Yeah, go ahead, Jordan. And you've been doing a great job in your reporting. You're doing very well. Right. Right, yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, I won the award twice from the economic developers, so I know a lot about this. And we're going to try over the next few months to get a deal on economic development. I'd like to see the mega credits go away. I'd like to see SOAR go away. And hey, congratulations to GM. I saw they had an announcement today. I guess the tariffs weren't as bad as they said. They're upping their Do you see this? They're upping their numbers, their projections. They're actually doing very well. And I saw the CEO of Ford was in with Howard Lutnick yesterday, and Howard Lutnick is still committed to the tariffs, and that was a very positive conversation. So, we support the big three. We want to continue to make Michigan a automotive manufacturing and research and development state. But, the tariffs are doing great things. I mean, we saw Stellantis, and I actually do think, I criticized Skubik earlier. I watched Skubik, and he said, the tariffs are working, and he's right. And you saw the unions say that. UAW, because of the tariffs, we saw that huge investment from Stellantis in Michigan. So we're really seeing some positive things there. We're looking on economic development. It's starting with Bill Schuette's regulatory reform. He has at least 50 bills. Did you guys see the picture? I mean, it was almost as big as the stack of the bills we killed on the walk-off. You saw that stack. It was like this high of all the bills we killed, the Democrat bills that would destroy the state on the walk-off. Well, it was almost that big, the pile of bills of regulatory reform we're going to do economic development in Michigan. And I'd say about 70% of those we agree with the Whitmer administration on. I mean, they came from the Lara report. I told the governor, I said, and the other Democrats, I said, we're not going to do, so some of what they call regulatory reform is, what if we just let the departments run amok and we don't include the people in the legislature? We said, we don't consider that regulatory reform. But a lot of these things on licensing, I mean, Bill Schuette talks about the potato licenses and things. We're going to get rid of a lot of that stuff, and we're going to reform it and improve it so we have true regulatory reform and reciprocity. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to look at the incentives. I'm not as big of a fan as the Mundy Township site is the Democrats. And as we work out the details of what this economic development looks like, that'll really tell us a lot about the future of that site. Was there another question?
I guess you had mentioned a second ago that you wanted to eliminate from SOAR.
Right. Yeah, so we defunded SOAR, and next we want to pass a law that repeals SOAR because the Democrats are never going to win the House as long as I'm Speaker, but they could win it and someday, and they get a trifecta. They could bring SOAR back and they could start using it again. So what we want to do is we want to repeal SOAR. So we've defunded SOAR. Now we want to repeal SOAR, and then we want to, drain the SOAR money. I told you guys something a lot of the media won't say. There's $6 billion of government slush fund money, including this money that sits in SOAR, and we're going to drain that. You don't want to drain it all at once, though, because you actually would have a bigger budget. See, what the Democrats wanted to do, the Democrats wanted to drain all of that $6 billion that they could sitting in the slush funds, like this SOAR money, and they wanted to spend it on pork. We weren't going to let them do that. And then one thing I did want to point out, we will never raise hunting and fishing fee licenses as long as I'm Speaker. And, this was a big thing the Democrats wanted in the budget negotiations, and I shut it down. Ken Borton and I and David Martin and Timmy Beeson, we said, we're not doing this. They tried so many different ways to shove in hunting and fishing fee license increases, and we blocked it on everything. And now they're just pouting. They're just passing it anyway in the Senate. It's like, we never will agree to this. It didn't happen. You lost in the negotiations on this. You can pass it through your chamber, but it will never move. Ken Borton isn't going to let it, neither am I. And David Martin, I said, David, just send the same press release you sent in April. It's dead. And he did. It's dead. It'll never happen. Yeah, go ahead, Travers. And great job you're doing, by the way. And that was a great picture. You must have taken that picture. My people. So people keep sending this to me, this article from the Midwesterner about how I've declared the hunting and fishing fee increases dead, which they are. And they send me this picture of me walking in the door, and they go, "This is the best picture. It's even better than the one that's not the picture you took on the the side profile shot." Yeah, because he, his was facing the other way. It couldn't have been his photo, but that, yeah, Photoshop. Yeah, no, Ben does a great. He's a great photographer, and Ben took that picture. But people are saying now, the photo of me walking in the door is actually a better photo. It's a beautiful photo. Maybe we should give you an award. Yeah, you could take your pick of these. No, we'll give him an award. We should for great photography. Maybe we'll give Ben one for last time, and we'll give you one. But that was a great one. And the best part is it's in big letters. Hunting and fishing fees are dead. So they see that. They say, "I'm so happy we won the House and elected you Speaker because you're doing exactly what you said you were going to do." So thanks for that, guys. What were you going to say?
With the budget now being done, you mentioned previously about looking at property tax reform. Is that something that we see in the next coming weeks or months?
Yeah, that's some great insight. We're going to move ahead on property tax reform. I thought we did a lot of great things on affordability. I mentioned the no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security, something that no one thought we could get a Democrat governor to sign. Really amplifying the working families tax credit, the great work President Trump's doing. That's going to save people thousands of dollars a year. I mean, we're seniors, our tip workers, our people that are working overtime. And then when you look at the work we did with cars, with the roads, and the fact that people are not going to have to make the car repairs, we started some work on affordability. I hear a lot about property tax. That's what people are really talking about. It used to be income tax. We're hearing a lot about property tax. And so our caucus, we're working on forging that unity on which property tax proposals we bring forward very soon. I want to see people get that same relief in their homes. You look at seniors, right? I mean, they probably paid off their house, but they're still paying thousands and thousands of dollars of property taxes every year. You can't sell your house to live in a smaller house because your property tax bill will go up. And these are real issues for people that we hear a lot about, and we're going to pursue it. We're just working to forge some consensus. So I think the timeline will be you'll see economic development conversation happen first, and then you'll see property tax moving next. Yeah. How are you doing, Craig? I would say that's not part of my plan. You asked what my plan is. That's not part of my plan. I will say objectively, I think that what we see from Quentin Messer has not been very good. I mean, he made some bets, and they didn't come to fruition. I do not like how the Michigan Strategic Fund Board. So one of the reasons that SOAR failed, and look, I voted for SOAR, right? So I'm not blaming other people. I'm just saying, like, when SOAR was created, one of the things that we didn't get right was that we let the Michigan Strategic Fund, after the legislature approved the money, the Michigan Strategic Fund could just change it on a whim, and they could downsize the number of jobs, and they could push out the number of years, and they could just continue to ensure the incentives happen. So the legislative oversight intended by Wentworth and Cherky and the governor and the leaders at the time that I supported, it didn't have that legislative oversight functioning the way we'd hoped. Secondly, when the Democrats created the automatic funding stream, it took even more out of it. We opposed that, but the Democrats, that was one thing they rammed through in their trifecta. Then it went on autopilot. Then all you did is you would appoint, whoever the most pro-project people are, you put them on the Appropriations Committee, and you can ram that thing through the House and Senate very easily, and we saw that. As a result, really bad deals got funded, and we look at the results. I mean, none of them, many of you say, and Bridge is a real leader in the reporting on this, they create no jobs. So as we move ahead, I would not support something that gives the Michigan Strategic Fund the ability to just constantly change the deal after the fact. I do not support cash payments up front. I think we have to look at something that is going to pay as a reimbursement after the fact for actual performance. I know that some of our members would like to see Treasury administer it and it be a more neutral, like if you meet this criteria, you get an incentive. But I'd say it's on the table that MEDC oversees it. I would have to come up with a way of doing that ensured that the Michigan Strategic Fund couldn't change it. And when you start moving away from the cash to reimbursing for actual performance, you take away some of those problems. And it's the same thing with the pork spending. You look at what we did in the budget, something I'm not getting enough credit for. We're changing those pork spending projects to reimbursements. So you're not going to have this problem again where somebody spends millions of dollars improperly, we catch it, and then Quentin Messer says, oh, I can't do anything about it until they spend this amount. They have to submit the expenses, and then they get reimbursed for proper expenses under the budget language we passed, and even the version of fake heat that the Senate passed yesterday. So, I think you're seeing a movement more in that direction. But a lot of these details are still things we're going to have to iron out, and Mark Tisdale and Mike Hoadley are leading that in the House. I'll go with Elena. You did a great job mentioning heat. Thank you. I know, but most of them, their editors take it out. Yeah, smaller. Yeah, and I want to be as respectful as I can to our friends in the room. I would encourage the Republican candidates, if you read something in the Detroit News, don't take it as the gospel. Like, critically think about it. So I understand, and I want to be respectful about that. I'm not trying to, take a shot. I mean, you asked me the question. I would just say to the candidates, there's so many things that the Detroit News writes that you see are clearly false. So then when you read this thing, you just assume it's true. I kind of encourage them, let's talk to each other and get the facts. Let's not just run based on what one media source says. And, they're relying on a group of people that got it wrong. I'm just saying that no matter what you use, even if we use their fake numbers, it's smaller. It's no matter what, it's smaller. Well, it's 81, but if we use the fake CRC report, it's still smaller. What was the and I wasn't trying to pick a fight. I'm just, that's what I saw. So I saw a story the other day that I personally wanted to be true. I said, it's in the Detroit News. It might not be true. But what were you? Yeah, I just pointed out, I would tell Mike Cox, don't just, if you see it in the Detroit News, call me. It's probably not true. Well, I just say it's probably not true. Don't take everything they say as the gospel, because sometimes they get it wrong, even though, they're well-intentioned. We assume the best intentions. But, like Michigan Advance, they do a better job, and they're paid by the Democrats. But they do a better job than the Detroit News. They're more fair. Think about how things have changed when you have the Republican speaker up here saying the Michigan Advance is more fair than the Detroit News. It's true, though. I read the stories, and the Michigan Advance, they cover subjects I talk about. They mention heat. They do a lot of things that's fair. And so I got to give, even though I won't give Ben the credit on the photo, I got to give Ben credit. These guys, what? It's very possible. I saw it, and it was pointed the other way. I said, how could this be the same photo? Now, Ben was looking at the hair and said, you look at this, okay. I mean, but they cover us more fair. It's just the way it is. Did you have, and look, I mean, our members had criticism. I didn't hear, I'm just trying to remember this. If you look at the number of members who voted for this bill, it's a much higher number than what you would have thought. And you look at who voted for it, and if you said these members would vote for this bill, none of you guys would have believed me. So, you're going to get a few members that voted against it, and I respect that. But, we had, 90-some votes? Was it 100 votes? We had a lot of votes. And the Democrats, they empowered Gretchen Whitmer in the House. I give them credit. Puri finally figured it out. He just empowered Whitmer, and we got a deal. And then it took a little longer, but then Brinks empowered Whitmer, and Whitmer and I got a deal, and Brinks performed. And it worked out well. What'd you say, Travers?
I was wondering if I could get your comments on the nonprofit campaign that hasn't done the reporting there.
Yeah. Yeah, Detroit News. That's the one I said. It might be true, but it's in the Detroit News, so let's all be careful. But yeah.
Yeah, just look kind of about the giving grants and then not the reporting on it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we should look more at it and ensure that it's true what they said. But with that said, if it's true, I would just point to this as an example of where, when I ask the governor, when I ask Brinks about some of these things and I ask what they are and they don't know what they are, we'd benefit from more disclosure so they could say this is what this is and we could look into it. This was not something that we had looked into before it was funded. It came from the Senate Democrats. It was something they really wanted. And there were billions and billions of dollars of pork that we killed that they wanted to do. This was one that they really felt strongly about, and it got in. And now we look at it, and there's a lot of questions that are being raised. And I think we would have benefited from them disclosing this much longer ago. And, again, I can be critical of these press sources, but this is an example where, by looking at what, was that Craig, was that your story, or was that Beth? That was Beth. So, and Beth won that award, by the way. Beth's actually the best reporter at the Detroit News, but not as good of a politician as others. So Beth wrote that story, and she has a point. I give her credit. She has a point. And I think as we all look forward, we should be looking at these tax returns and through a stronger vetting period. So give Beth credit on that. Yeah, Rick. Correct. Yeah, it's probably five. It's more than 500, but less than 600. Yeah, so we looked at what are these growth projections for next year and what is the effect of us starting to drain the Democrat one-time slush funds and the the growth projection for next year and what the effect is of permanently dedicating the money we cut from departments to roads. And the projections we're working under, which is a consensus number of the House, Senate, and Governor, was about $500 million. And I will say, I do give, I read their report, and the one thing in there that I do give a little credence to is I do see now how having a consensus revenue estimating conference would have probably made the CRC report more accurate. I think they're operating under numbers that are not as accurate as I am, and I can see how in your position as the press, you're relying on their wrong numbers. I see now going through this how had we, and this is something Rick wanted us to do, and see, if we had done the consensus revenue estimating conference, you guys would probably understand more what I'm talking about because it would be out there, I was surprised when we worked through this how when you work, the administration just says, oh, by the way, we got all this money over here and all this money over here. And these guys are flush with cash over here, and you say, where was this in the reports we had? But the numbers we have, this is going to be, I think it's more than $500 million next year in the hole. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll have a Ghostbusters 2 to go along Heat 2. And I found another 3,000 Ghost employees with Matt Maddock. And this guy, he hasn't stopped. And he said, found more and more. And I'll say, yeah. It could. I mean, we got rid of 2,000. It saved us $200 million. So we get rid of 3,000. It gets us part of the way there. I've identified where the $5 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse is in the state budget. We can get rid of Ghost employees. You see some of the wasteful grant programs were saved with one-time money. There's not going to be one-time money next year to do that. We've seen the wasteful IT programs. We'll look at what happens with the business incentives, right? Hopefully we can continue to cut in Leo and other places. But we've identified the $5 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse, and it'll come from that. We just got to find $500 million more. And there are a lot of things we wanted to cut that we didn't cut this time. But I will say, this trajectory we're on, you're going to continue to see smaller budgets. And as the Medicaid work requirements kick in, and we start to get Medicaid under control, and we're not paying all these 45-year-old able-bodied adults that are sitting in their parents' basement playing video games, you're really going to start seeing this budget. This is a turning point, this budget we passed. It really is. Yeah, David. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, they're not taking a reasonable interpretation, and I think you'll see them fix it, but it's going to take a little while. I mean, it's like the hunting and fishing fees, and when they come out and they come right back and they're trying to ram those through. I mean, they got a bad deal. If you watch Winnie Briggs on Albin's show, you can just tell she's seething. She got a horrible deal. The Republicans won the negotiation. She can't really point to a single thing that she achieved in this negotiation for the Democrats. All she does is complain about me in the process, and they come right back to trying to raise your hunting and fishing fees because they didn't get that in the deal. So they're messing with heat because they made a bad deal there. They're messing with these hunting and fishing fee licenses, something that we shut down. They're mad. They got a bad deal. But, they empowered the governor, and give Brinks credit. She got the votes for the deal the governor and I made, and she performed. She signed her name and she performed. But it was not a great deal for Senate Democrats. They don't want the state workers to come back to work. I mean, think about that. Sarah Anthony, she doesn't want that. She's the ultimate Lansing insider. We cut their pork 87%. The Democrats never wanted to fix local roads. That was not their issue. That was Governor Whitmer and the House Republicans driving that thing. It got done. No tax on tip, overtime, Social Security. We accomplished all these things. The Republicans won the negotiation, but ultimately the people of Michigan benefited because we compromised with Governor Whitmer, and we kept the government open. Yeah, Elena. Oh, yeah. Right. Well, yeah, so I'll try to break this down. So remind me with your numbers, what is the excise tax on marijuana sales? Do you remember? Does anyone know? 6% excise. Do you guys know? I don't know offhand, but whatever it is, that's what'd you say? What? 10%? Yeah, that's right. 10%. So 10% sales tax is 10% of the marked up price, right? So that would be a 10% increase in the price because it's it's a sales tax. With the wholesale tax, it's it's not like after it's been marked up in the final sale. So the wholesale value is much lower than the sales value. So it's not like 24% of the price that you buy at the store. It's 24% of the value they get before they mark it up. So it's a smaller percentage than what you know what I mean. It's a much smaller percentage of the total price. That's how they tax a lot of tobacco products. They do the same thing. I know, like on those tobacco products, the markup might be 100%. I'll just, on some tobacco products, the wholesale value to the market value is 100% markup. I don't know exactly what that markup is on the marijuana, but my guess is it's a very large markup. So there will be an increase in the end user price, but it isn't going to be a 24% increase in the price. Maybe it's a 15 or 12%. It just depends on what the markup is from the wholesale level to the final level. There's been challenges to this, and I just say, look, the Democrats are the ones that wanted the revenue, and I find it laughable. I watched one of the interviews, and Brinks is on there. I think it might have been Albin. It says, it's all Speaker Hall's fault that the marijuana tax didn't get a hearing. It should have got a hearing. There wasn't transparency. Well, how many times, do you guys ever feel like I'm repeating myself? How many times I come up here and say the Senate Democrats should pass a roads plan because they want revenue? And then I didn't want revenue. I wanted zero revenue. I compromised with them, dollar for dollar. I said, you cut $1 of waste, fraud, and abuse, I'll give you $1 of revenue. The reason we didn't get to $3 billion is the Democrats wouldn't cut any more waste, fraud, and abuse. If she had a preference on revenue, she should have proposed a plan, and she should have had hearings on it. They didn't do that. How many times I come up here? Have hearings on the revenue you want. Pass a plan out of your chamber so we know what's serious. Then we never would have been in a situation where we're like hours before the government shuts down and we don't know if the Senate can pass a bill or not. That's why I passed this stuff in the summertime, or it was earlier. It was like March. I said, look, we're going to prove we're serious about roads because we're going to propose a plan and then we're going to pass it through our chamber. And that's how you know it's real and how we negotiate. When we did that, the governor said, this is the only legislative leader I've worked with that has the guts and the brains to do that. But, when a guy like Mark Hackles says, I knew this was going to happen when Speaker Hall came to see me, that's why, because we actually performed. If they would have performed and showed us what their plan was, there would have been all kinds of transparency. But they let me decide which one it was going to be, and I said it's going to be marijuana. Of your list, it's going to be marijuana. I don't think we need any of them, but we'll do marijuana off your list because, that's the easiest one for us to get done, and the Republicans. And now the EVs, they're going to pay their fair share. And that was another great story in the Midwesterner where they pointed out the EV fees. That was really good. But you look at it, what was going on with the EVs is when they came up with the original EV tax, they only based it on the gas tax. They didn't base that because the EV is a registration fee. They based that based on the gas tax. They didn't base that on the gas tax plus the sales tax. People with regular cars pay gas tax and sales tax. When you combine that, it raises the EV tax to what the other people are paying. It raises it to what people that fill up their tank are paying, and so it's fairness. And I don't know why they're crying. I mean, they should pay. Everyone if you polled this question, you should poll this question, Craig. Do you believe that EVs should pay the same amount as internal combustion engine cars? Most people would agree. The only ones who wouldn't agree are the EVs, and I bet half of them would agree. People believe that, but they're crying about it because it's part of their religion, the environmental wackos. So, any other questions? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Great job you're doing, by the way. Right. Question. Yeah, so that's a great question. I'd say, look, I mean, the way I thought this was going to go is, the Senate Democrats seem like such an unreasonable, unlikable, irrational group of people. But what I found is, typically when you work with people, you start, like Craig and I talk, and I'm like, Craig's actually a nice guy. Like you talk to people and you say, they're better than I thought they were. It's like, I kind of like them. They have some qualities that are likable. I thought that was going to happen working with the Senate, and it didn't happen. I said, wow, I was giving these guys too much credit. They're much worse than I thought. And so, that's a challenge, right? That's a challenge that we face is if the Senate Democrats don't perform on the commitments they made on heat and economic development, we're going to have a hard time. We're going to have a hard time moving forward on a lot of other things. So what I'd hoped was we were going to move on a lot of these smaller bills that are sitting in the chambers, and maybe you'd see like a huge movement of dozens and dozens of bills. I think what we really are looking at is we're going to get heat done. We're going to make Winnie Brinks honor her commitment. We're going to do our best on economic development to come up with something, and that's going to take up a lot of this year. And maybe through that, we'll finally see some qualities in Winnie Brinks and the Senate Democrats to say, okay, we can work with these people. Let's unload a bunch of other bills. I don't see that pathway right now, and I think the pathway is you got to honor your commitment on heat, and you've got to, like you guys, have any of you ever asked Winnie Brinks, did she sign an agreement to do economic development and try to make that happen before the end of the year? And what is her interpretation of that? I've never seen anyone ask her that. I haven't seen her comment on it. It isn't just me. I mean, Joe Tate had challenges with her. Obviously, the governors had challenges with her. I didn't see any Democrats praising her like we saw Mark Hackle praise me. I didn't see any of that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that too. Right? The idea is you put it forward, and you want to have a reasonable period of time, right? Because I, as critical as I can be of some of you guys, if we give you guys time and you guys are looking into this stuff, there are examples where you guys really, really found something and it helped. Or just members of the public looking at it, or maybe your story gave them resource to find it, and then somebody said, hey, did you know that this guy is on the board? So I think a longer period really benefits us. That's why I think 90 days is a best practice, but we're going to listen to feedback but I say this is one where you guys might have some interesting views. But I do think you guys should side with me on this, that 10 days is ridiculous. It's a joke. Yeah, David. Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, we want to be careful about how quickly we're draining these Democrat slush funds. They wanted to drain all of the $6 billion and use it to fill every cut we made and to spend the rest on pork. So you have to drain it slow. But I'm sure that we'll find another one-time expenditure that has value, and we can dedicate it to that. So, as we go ahead and, things come up, you see these things that come up year to year where you have an unexpected bill that you have to pay. You've got how much is left? 700 million, a slush fund right there. You can plug a hole with, But I'm telling you, we found $6 billion, and I think there's more. These guys are pulling cash out of everywhere. You wouldn't believe how much money the government has right now. I kind of looked behind the curtain. I said it was worse than I thought. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope that helped. I always enjoy our conversations, and maybe next year, David. Maybe next year, I'll be 199 instead of 201. All right, see you guys.